next we have Clark Huseman, and he is from Arkansas. And I'm going to let him go ahead and start and tell where he fits into all of this.
I have been a sighted supporter for 20 years, almost exactly 20 years. It was around this time in '99 when my son, who was 7 at that time, first started exhibiting some signs of some visual loss, and the script pretty much follows the same one that everyone here has. You go to doctors and they don't know what's going on, and so except for the details, it's pretty much the same kind of story. And as a parent, I mean, it's heartbreaking, because you really have, especially at that point, because we didn't know that this was a part of our family. We didn't know what to expect. We thought he had a brain tumor at some point. We still have a calendar page somewhere, and there's a doctor's visit somewhere in some, not always in our state, something on every single day. And so when you're dealing with that as a parent, especially when you don't even know what's going on yet, it's extremely difficult. And then things get better, things normalize. You find the adaptive technology that you need. Your son or daughter figures their way out. You've got school friends, you've got, all that stuff. And he, I don't know where he got it from. He's very sporty. I'm not sporty. I understand sports. I don't really care. He loves sports, and he's good at sports. He can hit a baseball better than I can. He can switch hit better than I can. I don't know how he does half the stuff he does, but he loves it. And that was always really important for us, was to keep him involved in anything that he wanted to do. It didn't matter if it was something that you would think was ridiculous for somebody who can't see to do. There was a program at some point through the School for the Blind called Jumpstart. And as part of and it's during the summer, and as part of Jumpstart, they offer to put you in some sort of job so you can shadow no matter where it is. And I don't remember exactly how this worked out, but he figured out that there was a photographer, an official photographer for the governor. And he said, that's what I want to do. And I'm sure somebody must have looked at that application and thought, now wait a second, this kid's coming from the School for the Blind and he wants to be a photographer? But they let him do it, and he was actually pretty good at it. And we realized that he'd sort of been practicing for that a long time. We'd taken him to Disney World at some point when he was little, and he'd gotten a digital camera, and we just thought, man, he is really into taking pictures of stuff. And we realized he's not really taking pictures of everything, but he's using the camera to zoom in on everything so he can see it better. There are so many things that he just intuitively figured out that made things a lot easier. And again, as time went by, you sort of almost forgot about that it was an issue. But we kept him involved in anything that he wanted to do, always. And then recently, about a year and a half or so ago, Cindy developed signs as well. And that is an entirely different type of gut punch. Even though you know the science behind it, even though you know that it passes maternally, even though we knew that Cindy had the possibility of it happening, it's such a rare disease that, of course, one person's going to have it, but maybe not two, certainly not in the same family. And so that became an entirely different journey. And we have our own business. There are only 3 of us that work there. It's Cindy's mom and Cindy and myself. And it's a very visual business. We own an art gallery, and we do custom picture framing. I don't think there are any aspects that you can't do that you need to see something. And so again, it's that process of figuring out which things can we adapt, which things can we do, how do we move around. And at first it was incredibly difficult. Again, it's like, I can remember one day we're leaving the house, and there were some things on the table you'd put sort of right by the door so you wouldn't forget them, and I didn't notice them, and of course Cindy didn't notice them either. And I got the door, and it's like I almost started crying because I realized I'm the person that has to be responsible for seeing everything at this point. I can't say, hey, did you grab that off the table? It's like, well, I didn't even know that was on the table. It's just, I think that's one of the things that people don't think about sometimes for a sighted supporter is what are we going through? It's easy in some ways to identify with the person who's lost their vision because you sort of have an understanding of that. But I don't think people always realize what an emotional toll it is on the sighted supporter as well. Often we're picking up all of the slack, or we're picking up extra duties. If there were 2 drivers, now there's 1. And in a business like ours, I absorbed more of the production aspect of our picture framing, and you sort of you do become, well, you feel guilty a lot, and sometimes I feel guilty saying that I feel guilty. The guilt comes from being frustrated. The guilt comes from taking up all of the extra slack. It's like, well, you start to grumble about it. It's like, well, what am I grumbling about? Because my wife has lost her vision and she can't even see, and she's got all these other challenges. But I think it's important to remind yourself that it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated. And it's important not to lose your sense of humor. I think so often especially as a sighted supporter, you feel like you don't want to laugh at things that happen. But, if your wife bends down and starts petting the coat that fell on the ground because she thinks it's your dog, I'm glad you're laughing because I think it's hilarious too. Or, you might freak out and scream because there's a black olive on the counter that you think is a bug. I'm stealing that from Wayne. That was a funny story. But things like that happen at our house too. We have 2 dogs and they're very hairy, so there are always little hair tumbleweeds around. And I have to remind Cindy, this is dog hair. These are not bugs all over our house. So I think it's really important to try to keep your sense of humor and remember that you're not laughing at somebody because they can't see it. I mean, there are things that are just funny. And something else I think that's important to remember is so many people will come up to us and say they're sorry for us, and they feel really badly that we're going through this. And it's hard to take that in the spirit in which they intend it, but I don't feel sorry for myself. Cindy doesn't feel sorry for herself. I don't feel sorry for Christian. We all have things that we're dealing with. I can remember early on going to the doctor's appointments, and you're really bummed out at that point because you're kind of absorbing all of this and realizing I'm so bummed that Christian's not going to be able to do this, he's not going to be able to do that, and whatever. And then you look at somebody next to you in the doctor's office, and you're like, man, okay, this person is dealing with a whole lot more than I am. But what you're dealing with is hard as well. And I think that's important to remember, too. It's like it doesn't matter that what you're dealing with doesn't seem as hard as what they're dealing with, but what you're dealing with is hard also. I've made myself notes. I cheated, but I don't think I've looked at them very much, and I've probably forgotten lots of things that I was going to say as well. But I've enjoyed being a part of this community. I think that's incredibly important, not just for the VIPs, but for the sighted supporters as well. There are lots of you out here that have filled that role, and it's important for us to get together also and to be able to compare notes and laugh about the things that we have to deal with. So seek each other out.